So welcome everyone. I'll just put us into presenter mode so we have a nice large screen. Welcome to today's webinar. This is a webinar hosted by BioPhorum, by the Sustainability Forum, and it's focusing on the commitment to develop a harmonized approach to product carbon footprint data for the biopharma industry. So I'm Becky Tushingham, and I'm a facilitator at BioPhorum, and I've had the pleasure of working with the team who are here to present to you today. I am joined by my colleague Steve Zartarian, who's going to be supporting with the chat. And Steve will also be posting some links and a link to a very short anonymous survey at the end of the webinar, which we would be really grateful if you could complete. I'm going to start us off today with a very brief overview of BioPhorum to ensure that everyone is up to speed, and some basic housekeeping to make sure that everyone enjoys today's event. I'm then going to introduce and hand over to our presenters. So for those of you who aren't familiar with BioPhorum, BioPhorum is a collaboration of industry leaders and subject matter experts who are working together to pool their knowledge, best practice and their ideas in order to really drive industry change. We are a member-led collaboration, and we help our members from across the global biopharma and device industries to connect, collaborate and accelerate progress for the benefit of all. We currently have 12 forums covering all elements of the biopharma value chain, allowing our member companies to really align their expertise and their interests with like-minded peers. So please do just reach out to us if you'd like any more information at all about BioPhorum. Moving on then. So some housekeeping for today's event. Please do remain on mute unless you're speaking, just to minimise any background noise. We really want today's webinar to be interactive, so we're asking you to please share your views, your ideas and your questions with the panel, but we'd like you to wait till the presentation has finished if that's possible. Please, you can post questions in the chat box during the presentation and these will be picked up at the end, and there'll also be time for a Q&A session with the panel after the presentation as well, so just raise a hand if you want to ask a question. The webinar will be recorded today and it's going to be shared on the BioPhorum website and via LinkedIn as well. The slides and the link to the recording will then be sent to anyone who's registered for the webinar today. So that leads me to our panel. We're really lucky we've got an experienced panel of speakers from a range of backgrounds with us today. We're joined by Robert Barentine from Saint-Gobain Life Sciences, Matteo Alaria from Sartorius, Andy Whiting from AstraZeneca, Caroline Carmel from Saint-Gobain Life Sciences, and Shanina Barrera from Amgen. So a warm welcome to our panel, our members, and to you, our audience as well. And I'm now going to hand over to Matteo to begin today's presentation.
Thank you, Becky. And welcome everyone. So today we're here, it's a panel that is representing BioPhorum Sustainability, and this specific panel is representing the Product Carbon Footprint Working Group, which is made of suppliers, license holders and CDMOs. So it's really a wide area of stakeholders involved in this industry. And this all started at the end of 2022, where there was a very fruitful session on how to develop better transparency on carbon. And that led to the discussion of how good it would be if we could create some sort of a framework working all together to create more transparency on carbon. And so we know that there's challenges on scope 3 at license holders, CDMOs, suppliers. So really there's more regulation that is coming, and we decided to start laying down the basic foundation of a framework to harmonize product carbon footprinting in biopharma. And as that, we believed that we needed a cross-functional working group. We started defining what is the outcome, the solution that we wanted to do. And here we're providing the commitment, the position statement that outlines what we want to address in a holistic way. And the idea is really today to present to you what it's built in this statement, what is the context and where we're trying to drive with this framework, and what are the next steps that we see, and also, of course, how you can contribute or be part of that. And again, one major point is that we don't want to create something just for the sake of creating, but building up and leveraging existing resources, as well as creating no duplications, but rather synergies with other industry-specific initiatives that are happening. And so that's the reason why we have created this commitment. And we can go to the next slide, please. And in the next slide, we see that we have a roadmap that has been developed by the BioPhorum Sustainability group. And this outlines the fact that the vision is that we want to improve patient health by providing biopharmaceuticals while at the same time making sure that the planet and resources are taken care of. And so this step, which is the development of this common industry approach to calculate and exchange environmental data in terms of a framework of self-declaration on product carbon footprint, is the first step that we see on specifically on decarbonization and on the topic of carbon. If we go to the next slide, we can see that we have, of course, a specific reason why we're doing that. As we said, we have a general landscape which is driving more and more action on global warming. So climate change is a topic. Everyone is looking at solutions. There's everyone that is setting targets, starting initiatives, and the value chain is the crucial point. You can't really work on your own. You need to collaborate and create cooperation with other partners in the value chain to reach those targets. So as we want to do that, the idea is to use carbon footprint data, how to use it to help improve part of the information at corporate level, as well as at the product level for decision-making and so on and so forth. And the sense of urgency, we see it in the UK, in the National Health Service, the NHS, is the first one of, we believe, probably others that are going to look at sustainability and especially product carbon footprinting as a mandatory or a needed input from the clients. So in this case, the license holders, the CDMOs that provide or supply to this kind of players. So again, we have a general context. We have a sense of urgency specifically for this industry, and we know that there's more regulation and legislators that are looking at this topic. And the alignment is really that as we build this position paper within this working group, we try to get an oversight of the regulatory landscape, also initiatives at industry level. We know that there are, as we said, the initiative of the NHS, but there's also from the PEG, so the Pharmaceutical Life Cycle Assessment Consortium, as well as the Sustainable Market Initiative. All of those are setting some sort of framework or a direction to look at carbon, decarbonization, what to do in the value chain, and how to approach it. And all of those call for more transparency on product carbon footprint and life cycle assessment. And specifically, the PEG, so the Pharmaceutical Life Cycle Assessment Consortium, that is developing industry-wide product category rules to allow pharma companies to evaluate the sustainability environmentally of their drug products. So as those are going to be needed at the end, we feel that this framework fits in and provides additional supporting information to allow the license holders and the likes to communicate to the final clients the right detailed information. And I think for more on this, I'm going to pass the word to Robert, that is going to talk more about this.
Yeah, thanks, Matteo. So as Matteo mentioned, BioPhorum is a group of license holders, contract development and manufacturing organizations, and key suppliers, and we are committed to defining a common industry approach for calculating and exchanging greenhouse gas emissions data. And this is our product carbon footprint framework and the position paper that we've come to. So maybe to start and define what is a product carbon footprint. This diagram in the middle is a really great kind of a image to show the scopes that you could take. So in the purple dotted box you see on the left, cradle to gate, this includes everything upstream for a product that we're calculating a product carbon footprint for. So the extraction, the transportation, the conversion of materials, shipment to the manufacturer. Sorry, if you could go back. And then also the manufacturing that happens by that entity, and then you do the cutoff at the end of that before it goes then to the next step in the supply chain. So that's cradle to gate, and so that's up to the factory gate. We could also look at cradle to grave and also include the downstream impacts that emit greenhouse gas emissions, so transportation to the customer, the user, the use of that product or material, and then the end of life ultimately. So that's cradle to grave. So for the purposes of this framework that we're developing, it'll mostly be for cradle to gate when we're talking about building up in the supply chain from the earliest level of suppliers through the tier 1 suppliers directly to these drug product manufacturers. And this diagram and this definition are coming from the Together for Sustainability PCF guideline. It's the most established method today for determining climate impact of products, and it considers the total greenhouse gas emissions caused throughout these supply chains. Yeah, so this is a big inspiration for the work that we're doing. So again, TFS is more for the chemical sector, and the BioPhorum PCF framework is going to be more for suppliers and drug product manufacturers in the biopharma space. Next slide, please. So how are we responding to this challenge? And maybe to recap a little bit. So the position paper that has been published explains in detail the current shortcomings of corporate carbon accounting methods. For example, due to a lack of accurate data, spin-based assumptions are often used for scope 3 calculations, and these really are not the most accurate ways to account for greenhouse gas emissions. So the members of BioPhorum, we agree that a framework for carbon footprint calculations specific to our industry will help align everybody to this one way of calculation and sharing information, and that'll add value. So some of the benefits we could see here are identification of CO2 hotspots along the value chain, and that would allow us to prioritize actions for reduction. We can make improvements to the data quality and the transparency between suppliers and end users, and also, again, build an alignment with existing guidance and reporting standards that exists, like ISO and the NHS, PEG, SMI that Matteo mentioned. This plays well with some of those other initiatives that are happening elsewhere in the supply chain. So the diagram on the right is actually a really, again, a nice way to kind of visualize the buildup of carbon footprint through the supply chain. And this comes actually from the BioPhorum Sustainability Roadmap that Matteo also mentioned. So again, it shows the buildup through the supply chain. So we see that the emissions data builds on very foundational data sets, such as life cycle inventory databases on the far left. These are used for life cycle assessment. And other PCF methodologies, building on those LCI data sets, such as, again, the chemical sector's TFS, Together for Sustainability PCF framework, provides a really consistent calculation method and guidelines for the raw material suppliers across multiple industries. And then that comes to us. The BioPhorum PCF framework expands on this work by adapting a sector-specific methodology for biopharma. And the BioPhorum PCF could be used for, let's say, single-use technologies used in bioprocessing, such as transfer and pump tubing, containers, and filters. And this carbon footprint data developed with these frameworks will further support the accuracy and transparency of downstream activities in the manufacture of drug products. And with that, and maybe to give a little better perspective on this, I'm going to hand it over to Andy. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. I'm going to talk through this slide, which further elaborates on the framework scope and benefits. On the left-hand side, we see an example of a high-level system boundary, but a little bit more specific than, let's say, the one that Robert talked through earlier, just specific to the kinds of products that are in scope for the framework. That's to say, supplies into the biopharma industry, such as single-use consumables and raw materials and chemicals that are specific to the biopharma industry. The diagram shows the cradle-to-gate life cycle stages occurring at the biopharma supplier, so the product manufacturing and product packaging, and then shows the life cycle stages in the gate-to-grave part of the system, distribution to the license holder or CDMO, and then the activities that occur there, namely the use of the product in drug substance manufacturing and its eventual disposal by the license holder or CDMO. The framework takes a cradle-to-grave scope, including the raw materials, energy, and cleaning that are required for each of the life cycle stages, and accounts for the emissions and waste associated with them. On the right-hand side of the slide, we've summarized some of the key benefits for stakeholders involved. From a license holder or CDMO perspective, having access to consistent and transparent cradle-to-grave product carbon footprints will help them to more accurately calculate their own Scope 3 organizational footprint, specifically categories 1 and 2, which are purchased goods and services and capital goods, respectively. Receiving these data can also improve the accuracy of the drug substance and drug product carbon footprints and LCAs, as Robert alluded to, the LCAs that would be then provided to payers such as the NHS. The full cradle-to-grave information would further assist license holders and CDMOs in making fairer procurement decisions about products, at least with regard to the carbon footprints criteria within procurement. From a supplier perspective, a key benefit is the being directed to any pre-existing guidance or where gaps have been identified as part of the framework's work. We'll be providing new guidance where none currently exists, and that's as opposed to suppliers having to develop their own guidance within isolation. This will improve consistency of approach and allow for more efficient data collection and sharing as a consequence. An additional benefit is suppliers working together with the license holders and CDMOs to ensure the buy-in of all the stakeholders in the value chain and an alignment with existing guidance or guidance that's under development in other parts of the value chain. With regard to the gate-to-grave information as well, there'll be benefits for suppliers in having standard approaches as to how to assess the impact of the use of sold products and the end-of-life treatment of sold products. For example, there'll be opportunities to gain input from license holders and CDMOs to develop appropriate assumptions. And this would also help improve consistency in the calculation of certain downstream Scope 3 organizational emissions, such as categories 11 and 12. Next slide, please, Becky. So here we present a checklist of both what the framework will do and what it won't do. Firstly, what the framework will do. It will improve data accuracy and transparency and sustainability data in the biopharma industry. It will help to identify climate impact hotspots, both for the suppliers' products that they're assessing and also downstream for the license holders and CDMOs conducting their own product carbon footprints and LCAs or Scope 3 organizational footprints. And as a consequence, it will facilitate collaboration on emissions reductions where key hotspots have been identified. It will help industry to connect with the existing international standards, and it will be voluntary. Secondly, what the framework won't do, now some of these are just simply the negatives of the previous list, but just to call out a couple specifically, it will not be product category rules like the Pharma LCA Consortium's work. So it's not the product category rules for LCA, it's focused specifically on just carbon footprinting at this stage at least. And so it will not be providing accounting rules for the drug substance and drug product. Our focus is on the products that are supplied into the biopharma industry and are used to manufacture those products, but it's the one step above in the supply chain. I'm happy to hand over now to Shanina, who'll talk through the next steps. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. As you can see, we're committed to embedding sustainable approaches into our biopharma industry products and services. Product carbon footprints can help us track those improvements as we decarbonize our operations to manufacture life-saving medicines. And carbon product footprints can also be used as a decision-making tool to reduce our Scope 3 value chain emissions. Now, there are benefits if we purchase a product or service with a lower carbon footprint, helping mitigate climate change impacts. However, we need a harmonized carbon accounting approach for these benefits, aligning the methodologies and also improving the quality of that supplier data and information. So over the next 2 years, we will develop the first product carbon footprint framework that will be piloted between license holders and suppliers within the pharmaceutical industry. And so our first step has already been completed, which is to publish our industry position statement. It's our commitment between the license holders, contract development, manufacturing organizations, and key suppliers to define a common industry approach for calculating and exchanging environmental impact data. And that's really through the development of product carbon footprints. Second, we are going to be performing a gap analysis. So we're going to be looking at current existing product carbon footprint methodologies and guidelines and identify any missing guidance for an industry harmonization. So we'll want to pinpoint those gaps. We want to suggest any recommendations for a unified approach. And we're really going to be monitoring as well any external developments that could influence a product carbon framework. As we see, there's incoming climate regulations that are also impacting the need for product carbon footprints. So once we address the gap analysis, we'll draft the final PCF framework that we're going to pilot as license holders and suppliers. And thereafter, we're going to be benchmarking, looking at the benefits and limitations of utilizing this product carbon footprint framework and aim to roll out the final PCF framework that we hope our life science peers as well as our suppliers adopt as we begin to evolve the sustainability landscape for providing carbon product footprints. So I'll turn this over to my colleague, Caroline.
Yes, thank you very much, Janina. So yeah, what the future looks like, actually, thanks to the gap analysis, we will be able to see which area we should conduct and where it makes sense to pursue and where it doesn't make sense to continue. So here you have a list of potential area of exploration. They are quite large, but we already identified that there is an area around scope. So on which product should we then focus and which product will be then involved in this framework, upstream and downstream the value chain. Also from the same products, the same suppliers will need to also see how to align on the source of data to feed the product carbon footprint. And we were also thinking that it could maybe make sense to also open our scope to other products made on same materials, but for other industries, for sharing methodology, data set, and maybe scenario for all the life cycle. So from all this inspiration and benchmark from other industry, it could help us to pursue on scope. Then regarding framework, we were making some discussion on going further into maybe normative approach with the product category rules, because we see this as a structurating in other industry. So let's explore this. And also how to build strong foundation into the carbon footprint tools to make sure it's robust enough to continue and extend this for the value chain. And then also some potential area around disclosure, sharing. So explore how we can deal with third-party verification, verified declarations also, and also share among the industry the environmental data in order to have more transparency and answer to carbon reduction also in the industry. So all of this will be fed also from other industries. And we see already that it took time in other industries. So we need to keep this in mind also and have a step-by-step approach. Anyway, biopharma is still at the beginning of its journey, but it's really committed to drive changes through collaborations. So you will see in the next slide how you could be involved and maybe how to reach and pursue the discussion. So BioPhorum is a member organization. So of course you could contact us directly and BioPhorum directly to know more. But you can also see how you could benefit from these position statements and see how it could help you to also within your area and your industry and your network start discussion around this and maybe getting involved in the future. So it's really about beginning to consider future resources requirement related to this topic. It will come. It's already an area where we see really need to have a GHG greenhouse gas accounting and life cycle assessment, and also see how to engage our own supply chain to encourage data sharing. So thank you for your attention.